She told me, "We've booked your ranch for 150 guests." My hands actually trembled. At first, I thought I must have misheard. Then my phone vibrated with an email saying the exact same thing, a confirmation. Like I'd agreed to something I never saw. The twist? Navigation apps were already routing people to my locked gate. I'm standing there with a coffee that suddenly tastes like ash, watching the first car slow as if it belongs. This isn't paranoia, it's a nightmare playing out. Drop a comment if you've ever had neighbors pull something this bonkers. Let me paint the picture. It's 7:30 a.m. I'm at my kitchen window holding a cup of coffee that's still too hot to sip properly. The ranch is quiet except for the usual noises. Cattle moving in the distance, a few birds kicking off their day. Then I spot something that doesn't fit. There's a bright yellow arrow sign stuck at the edge of the public road, pointing straight at my private gate like it owns the place. I walk outside and find not one sign but a whole string leading right to my property. Each one reads Realtor Caravan 150. The final arrow sits barely 10 feet from my gate. Aimed at my ranch like I'm the main event, my neighbor Rick strolls over from next door, wearing that look that's part amusement, part disbelief. "Jake," he says, pointing at the signs, "you throwing a party today?" I take a sip and shake my head. "First I'm hearing about it, Rick. First I'm hearing about any of this." He pulls out his phone to photograph the signs. "You might want to document this before it gets interesting," he suggests. Smart man, Rick. Right then my phone buzzes with an email. The subject reads, "Ranch Reservation Confirmation." I open it, and Denise Caldwell's name is at the top. She's the HOA president for the subdivision bordering my land. The woman who apparently thinks she runs more than her tiny community. The email is blunt. The HOA has reserved my ranch for their Realtor Caravan event today. 150 real estate agents are expected to arrive tomorrow between 2 and 3 p.m. for a community showcase tour. It even mentions something about trailhead access being covered under the CC&Rs, the covenants, conditions, and restrictions that govern their subdivision, not my ranch. It's like someone claiming their neighborhood bylaws give them a pass to stroll into your living room. The presumption is almost impressive. Almost. Rick leans in and whistles low. "She's got nerve," he says. I'm starting to think nerve isn't the right word. I scroll down and see an attachment, a map with a geofence pin for the event check-in. That's the digital marker that tells phones and GPS where an event is supposed to be. The pin sits right at my gate, not at their clubhouse where you'd expect such an HOA event, not at any neutral public spot, but at my private ranch entrance. Someone actually set their event app to direct 150 people to my front gate. About 20 minutes later, right on cue, the first casualty of this genius plan appears, a woman in business clothes standing on the public road looking perplexed, phone in hand, glancing between the screen and my gate like she's trying to solve a riddle. Rick waves from his driveway. "You looking for the realtor thing?" He calls. She nods and shows her phone. The app tells her to check in right here, but there's a locked gate. I go over to talk to her. "Because this is a private ranch, not an event venue," I explain. She looks genuinely surprised. Apparently the idea never crossed her mind. "But the geofence pin is right there on her GPS," she insists, showing the screen. Sure enough, a red dot sits exactly at my gate coordinates. "Who told you this location was available?" I ask. She pulls up the same email I received from Denise, forwarded by their real estate office. The woman apologizes and says she'll wait on the public road until someone clarifies. I tell her that's sensible and suggest calling the organizers for clearer directions. As she walks back to her car, I turn to Rick. "This is just the start, isn't it?" He nods and snaps another photo of the arrows. "I'd say you've got about 90 minutes before this gets really interesting," he says. That's when I make my first call of the day, not to Denise or the HOA, but to the county sheriff's non-emergency line. I explain, unauthorized signs on the public right-of-way pointing to private property, an event scheduled at my place without owner permission, potential trespassing. The dispatcher records the details and says a deputy will be in the area this morning. I go back inside to top up my coffee and run through what I know. Someone programmed an app to direct people to my gate. Someone sent emails claiming my ranch was reserved for an event. Someone planted a trail of signs leading to my property, and none of it happened with my consent. My coffee cup gives a small rattle as I set it down, not nervousness so much as disbelief at the audacity. Rick taps on my kitchen window and points down the road. The app is already steering the next wave of arrivals to my gate. Another car slows as the driver studies the arrows, trying to figure out where to go. This is going to be a long morning. What unsettles me is how methodical this all is. The signs weren't a spontaneous prank. Someone manufactured them, installed them, and programmed the GPS coordinates. There was planning, deliberate planning, that assumed they could use my land without asking. The more I think about it, the angrier I get. I step back outside to take my own photos. The arrow signs, the GPS dot on the confused agent's phone, the email from Denise claiming the reservation. Rick was right about documenting everything. I have a feeling this evidence will matter before the day ends. My phone pings. The app has scheduled check-in at my gate tomorrow at 2:30. By noon, what was annoying has become genuinely worrying. Orange traffic cones line the public right-of-way in front of my gate. Someone has set up a check-in table with a pop-up tent and folding chairs on the county road shoulder. It's public property, but clearly meant to funnel people to my private ranch. A vendor truck pulls up. The driver climbs out with clipboard and tool belt and immediately starts inspecting the gate lock. When I approach, he barely glances up. HOA cleared this job, he says, matter-of-factly. I'm here to ensure access for the caravan event. I stop and let that sink in. This man truly believes the HOA has authority over my private land. It doesn't. This is a private ranch, not community property, I tell him. He finally looks at me, and for the first time, confusion begins to register. I got the work order from the community management company, he insists, showing me a piece of paper. It instructs him to ensure gate access for the realtor caravan. The work order is real enough, but it's founded on the same false assumption everyone's making. Rick appears beside me like he has a sixth sense for trouble. What's the nature of the work? He asks. The vendor explains he's been hired to install temporary access controls and make sure the gate can handle heavy traffic. Rick and I exchange looks. This is beyond a GPS fluke. Someone actually paid for professional services under the belief they own my land. I asked to see his certificate of insurance. He hands over a folder and I flip through it. The policy names the event location as Community Ranch Access Point, already incorrect. The additional insured section, where my name should be, is blank. As I lower the papers, several realtors cluster nearby, peering through the gate and murmuring. One woman in heels points at the paperwork. We paid for access. Why is the lock still on? She asks. The vendor's hand trembles a bit. He didn't sign up for an open argument on a dusty roadside, he mutters. This insurance doesn't cover my property, I say firmly. If someone gets hurt on my land, neither you nor I are protected. He studies the documents again, worry creasing his face. A realtor blurts, we have a contract. The HOA promised the ranch. The vendor glances from her to me, torn. His voice falters. Maybe I should call the office. I nod, keeping my voice steady but loud enough for the gathering crowd. Yes, call them right now, before this becomes trespassing on camera. Heads lift as phones begin to record. While he's on the line, Rick points out another problem. The cones and check-in tables sit on the county road shoulder. That's an encroachment on public right-of-way, Rick notes. You need a county permit to place temporary structures there. The vendor hears this and repeats it on his call, his tone getting more urgent. I decide to make my position unmistakable. I grab a sheet of poster board from my truck and with a black marker write in large letters, "No event without owner's written permission." I fasten it to my gate where it's plainly visible. The vendor ends his call. Sir, I think there's been a miscommunication about this job, he says. I offer a sympathetic nod. I think you're right about that. The miscommunication is someone told you this property was available for an event. He starts packing up his tools. My dispatcher says we can't proceed without proper insurance coverage and property owner authorization, he reports. Rick photographs the COI paperwork before the vendor leaves. The certificate is technically valid but useless here. My name is not listed under additional insured. As the vendor pulls away, I notice more vehicles assembling on the public road. Not just individual agents now, but what looks like a coordination team. I notice a group of people in matching polo shirts, clipboards in hand, arranging what looks like a staging area. The check-in table remains under its pop-up tent, and now folding chairs are lined in a semicircle. My phone buzzes. It's the county office calling me back about the encroachment concern I raised earlier. The clerk confirms that no permits have been granted for temporary structures on this roadside location. She adds that any gathering of more than 50 participants usually needs special approvals, particularly if there's an impact on county-maintained roads. I send her photos of the setup along with the insurance paperwork I've collected. She assures me someone from the county will inspect the site later today. In the meantime, she warns that any unpermitted structures on a public right-of-way may be cited or removed. My shoulders tighten as more vehicles pull over, the road shoulder steadily transforming into a base camp. Chairs scrape across the pavement while a banner unfurls and catches in the wind. This feels less like logistics and more like a takeover. People are laughing, snapping selfies, and behaving as if my ranch already belongs to them. With each new arrival, it's harder to believe this is some innocent mix-up. They're building an event on the assumption that my private land is theirs, and the air feels charged, like a confrontation is just ahead. Rick returns, phone in hand, checking the county GIS system to verify property lines and monuments. He shows me no public access is recorded here. There's no approved corridor leading to or through my gate, which means this entire setup is happening without legal standing. The timing begins to click into place. They organized an entire event, sent invitations, lined up vendors, issued insurance certificates, without the one thing that mattered, the landowner's written consent. What unsettles me most is the orderliness of it all. Work orders, certificates, coordinated vendors. This wasn't a careless mistake over boundaries. This was someone treating a planning document as though it were already law. A minibus turns the corner, approaching the gathering on the shoulder. Through the windows, I see people in business attire, likely the realtor caravan. The very event everyone prepared for is about to arrive, only to find the main venue locked behind my gate where a sign makes my position clear. Watching them drive up feels like witnessing a slow-motion train wreck. They all came out here based on faulty information, the realtors trying to do their jobs, the vendors expecting legitimate work. Everyone except the person who orchestrated this mess is about to be disappointed. The larger bus is slated for tomorrow. Today, the group is just staging on the shoulder. The crowd is already restless, waiting to see what unfolds. The afternoon heat is building when Rick jogs back from his house. Out of breath, his expression sharp. "Jake," he says, "they're trying the back way." I set down my coffee and follow him toward the rear of my land, where the utility easement runs along the fence. Sure enough, a cluster of people in business clothes are walking the utility access road that serves the power lines. This easement exists strictly so the electric company can maintain equipment. It's not a public trail. At the front of the group, someone with a clipboard appears to be giving instructions as they walk. I grab my truck keys and drive to the access point where the utility road meets my boundary. A vehicle is already parked there, unloading more people who look like they're scouting. The easement gate is locked and posted with signage, but that doesn't seem to be slowing them. "Excuse me," I call as I approach. "This is a utility road, not a public path." The woman with the clipboard turns, introduces herself as part of the event planning team, and explains, "We were told the utility easement provided legal access to the ranch. Our research showed it could serve as an alternate route." I point at the posted signs. "That's for electric company maintenance only, not public use." The wording is plain. Authorized utility vehicles only. Beneath that, another sign in bold red letters. No public access. Just then, Mark Bradley arrives in his utility truck. He's the technician responsible for maintaining this line and knows exactly what's allowed. "Afternoon, Jake," he greets, stepping out with a folder of official documents. "Got your message about people trying to use the service road." He turns to the group, his tone professional. "This easement is for utility maintenance only. Not for gatherings, not for events." He hands over a letter on company letterhead, spelling it out in unmistakable terms. The road is for service vehicles, never for public assembly. He points out sections covering liability risks and insurance conflicts. The clipboard woman pushes back, "But surely there's some provision for community access?" "The easement connects multiple properties to public roads." Mark shakes his head firmly. "Ma'am, easements are limited to their defined purpose. This one is for power line maintenance. That's it. Not for hiking, not for events, not for community functions." The planner's confidence visibly deflates. Their workaround suffers the same flaw as their main plan. They have no authorization. Mark stresses the safety hazards. High voltage lines make unsupervised public use unacceptable. Rick arrives with his camera, documenting every sign for our growing file. Mark adds that the easement will actually be closed for routine inspection this afternoon, from 2 onward to all but authorized personnel. He posts a closure notice on the gate, effectively blocking any attempt to use it as an alternate route. I forward copies of his letter and notice to the county office and the deputy monitoring the issue. That makes it official. There's no legal access to my property from front or back. The planners huddle near their vehicle, clearly scrambling. The earlier confidence is gone, replaced by quiet, uneasy deliberation. As they pack up, the clipboard woman phones someone, her gestures sharp and frustrated. When she finishes, she approaches me once more. "Sir," she says, "there seems to be a mix-up about access for today's event. Could you give us the correct contact for resolving this?" I point at the sign on my main gate. "No events without written owner permission." "That would be me," I tell her. "I'm the property owner, and I've authorized nothing." She jots down my information, saying someone from the HOA will reach out. I reply that I look forward to that conversation. What strikes me is how quickly their confidence melts when confronted with hard evidence. They don't argue with Mark's authority or dispute the signs. They've just been working off bad instructions from someone higher up, someone who either didn't grasp property law or chose to ignore it. Watching them leave, I almost feel sorry for them. But if they're willing to test utility easements, what other creative routes might they try? The sun is high now, hours still to go before things reach their peak. The easement isn't a ticket to the party. The red signs already made that clear. The next morning, I'm at the county office with Ellen Carter, who oversees permits and event approvals. She spread my emails across her desk alongside Rick's photos of the signage and yesterday's setup. With 15 years in this role, she's seen nearly every kind of property dispute. They claimed the county already had owner consent on file, she says, adjusting her glasses as she scans the email chain. That's a serious claim. It suggests we issued authorization. She searches her system for anything tied to my property. Nothing. I hand her the forwarded email Denise Caldwell sent to the real estate offices, the one asserting that county approval was already in place. Ellen studies it, then clicks through something on her screen. "Jake, look at this email header," she says, printing a sheet filled with routing codes and server details. She circles one section in red. This shows the path of that so-called county message. See, received from HOA newsletter server. This didn't come from county servers at all. It came from the HOA system, her voice lowers. Forging county approval isn't a clerical mistake. That carries potential criminal penalties. My stomach drops. What does that mean exactly? I ask, though I already dread the answer. Ellen pulls up more technical data. It means someone used the HOA's email platform to create a message disguised as official county correspondence. The digital authentication markers all failed. It's the equivalent of forging a government letterhead signature. The word forging chills the room. This isn't arrogance anymore, it's fraud. Ellen marks the case as possible, spoofing and forwards it to the county IT team for investigation. She also flips open the regulation manual. For any event expecting more than 50 people, written owner consent or a special use permit is mandatory, she reads. I had already provided proof the event was planned for 150 guests, triple the threshold. Ellen verifies that no permit was ever requested or issued. Her conclusion is blunt. Either someone misunderstood the regulations or they deliberately ignored them. She opens the attachment that came with the so-called county approval, a file named consent.jpg. At first glance, it looks like a scanned document, but Ellen quickly spots irregularities. The file's metadata shows it was created recently, despite being presented as authorization from weeks earlier. She notes another issue. The scan states owner authorized at the bottom, but avoids ever using the word written. That detail matters, Ellen explains, because the law specifically requires written consent. Verbal permission isn't valid for events of this scale. Ellen passes everything along to the deputy who first responded to my call, including her notes on the fake consent email and the absence of a legitimate permit. He assures her he'll include it in his report and remain available if things escalate. Then Ellen gathers the papers into a stack and delivers the point that unsettles me most. This isn't a mistake about property lines. Someone created a false front to make it look like you gave permission when you didn't. She lets the silence sink in. That level of fraud carries consequences far beyond a neighbor dispute. I feel my pulse hammering in my jaw. We've crossed into something much darker. The amount of planning behind this makes it clear it wasn't some last-minute mix-up. Forged county emails, GPS routing, vendor coordination, and alternate access planning, these aren't accidents. They're deliberate steps. Ellen hands me copies of the county records and advises me to document every future interaction with the HOA. If they're willing to forge county authorization, they may try other tactics to pressure you, she warns. I thank her for her thorough work and leave the office with a sharper view of what's really happening. That consent email wasn't just suspicious, it was an outright fabrication. Someone in the HOA used their email system to fake county approval for an event that was never cleared. On the drive back, I can't help but see the whole thing as absurdly brazen. The deeper we dig, the more obvious it becomes. The entire event was built on permissions they knew they didn't have. Hoping no one would examine the details too closely, what shocks me most is the sophistication. This wasn't an honest mistake about land use. It was someone who knew enough about government processes to forge convincing paperwork, but not enough to realize digital records leave traces that can expose them. As I pull into my driveway, my phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number asking if I'm free for a call about ranch access. I save the number and jot down the time. Something tells me this call will be revealing. Ellen's analysis already proved the county never issued approval. The email headers alone told the story. Someone at the HOA faked the authorization and hoped it would pass unnoticed. That afternoon, my phone rings right on schedule. The same number flashes across the screen, and when I answer, I hear Denise Caldwell's voice. I set the phone on speaker beside my recorder. Perfectly legal here in our one-party consent state. Mr. Hollis, Denise begins in her polished HOA president tone, I believe there's been some confusion about today's realtor caravan. I wanted to personally clear up any misunderstandings about access to your ranch. I sip my coffee and let her talk. She explains the HOA has been planning the event for months as part of its outreach program. To keep our MLS certification, we need to show community engagement, she says. That means documented participation. How many participants do you need? I ask, curious about the numbers driving this situation. 50 confirmed attendees, she replies instantly. That's the minimum to maintain our sponsor relationships and MLS standing. Now the motive is plain. This isn't a friendly neighborhood event. It's a numbers requirement. Denise needs bodies at her event to satisfy business obligations, and you assumed my ranch would be available for that? I ask evenly, keeping my tone neutral while the recorder captures every word. Denise pivots into a speech about implied access through community trails and long-standing neighborhood habits. I stop her gently. Trail use doesn't turn private land into an event space. 150 people can't transform a walking path into an entryway to my ranch. She hesitates, regrouping. Then she cites CCNR provisions, suggesting they establish certain community access rights. I remind her those documents apply to her subdivision, not my property. HOA rules don't create legal rights on someone else's land. The silence stretches, and I wonder if the call dropped. Finally, Denise returns, her tone now patronizing. Surely you understand the importance of community cooperation. This event benefits property values across the area, including your ranch. I nearly laugh at the logic that I should open my land to strangers because it might help property values. Miss Caldwell, good neighbor relations start with asking permission, not assuming it, I reply. That's when she makes the mistake I've been waiting for. I'll email you the official route sheet so you can see how little impact it would have. The ranch gate is just a check-in point. Please do, I say, hiding my eagerness. I'd be very interested in the documentation. We end the call politely, and within 10 minutes an email arrives with the attachment. I print it and spread it across the table. Professionally formatted with the HOA logo, it lists each stop on the tour, and there it is in black and white. Ranch gate check-in, 2:30 p.m. Someone officially documented my gate as the final stop without ever asking me. I set my coffee beside the sheet, angling the camera to capture both. 4 words tell the whole story. Ranch gate check-in. This was no accident. It was intentional, written down, and distributed. Rick comes over, sees the sheet, and shakes his head. They actually put it in writing, he mutters, snapping photos to preserve the evidence. The schedule even shows the entire caravan converging on my gate at once, 150 people arriving together. I forward the route sheet to Ellen and the deputy. It proves the event was built around my property, despite organizers knowing they lacked permission. The call from Denise was simply her last attempt to secure retroactive approval. Her willingness to send the document suggests she still believes her position is defensible. To her, this is a neighbor being uncooperative. The reality is she's organized a major event on private property without consent. I save the digital file and make multiple backups. This will be crucial evidence. The phone recording will help too. Denise clearly stated they need 150 attendees for MLS certification, showing the event is about business, not community. By late afternoon, the wind bends a banner reading Caravan 150 that someone tied to the public road near my gate. From the window, I watch vehicles stacking up along the shoulder. A security guard radios in from my gate, gesturing at the locked entrance. Minutes later, a locksmith truck pulls up. I head outside before he starts. "What's the job?" I ask. He shows me a work order authorizing lock removal for event access. It looks official, with letterhead and signatures, but no property owner consent. "Is there documentation showing the owner approved this?" I press. The locksmith frowns, rereads the order, and admits, "It says cleared by the HOA, but you're right. No owner's signature." Rick appears beside me. "Better check the insurance too," he suggests. I hand over the COI Ellen reviewed earlier. Rick points to the blank line. No additional insured, no mention of me. The locksmith stiffens. His company won't risk liability, especially under the cameras now raised by restless realtors. Someone shouts from the road, "Just cut it already, we paid for access." Phone's record. The locksmith shakes his head. "Without coverage, I can't touch the lock. My company won't risk breaking into private property on video." At that moment, the deputy arrives, parking his cruiser in plain view. He reviews the work order, COI, and the sign at my gate stating, "No events without written permission." Meanwhile, the crowd grows. Tables set up, chairs unfold, a registration station appears. Holding up the COI, the deputy addresses the group. The property owner isn't listed as insured. That means no coverage for incidents on his land. This creates legal problems for everyone, locksmith, organizers, all of you. Then he notices the cones and tables blocking the county shoulder. "Do you have permits for these?" he asks the guard. A nervous radio call later. The answer is no. "Clear the roadway," the deputy orders. Security scrambles to fold tables and drag cones away while cameras keep rolling. Realtors groan, one muttering, "This is embarrassing." The deputy takes photos of the scene for his report. When I point out my sign again, he nods. That's pretty clear. No written permission means no event. Without the property owner's consent and proper insurance in place, the event couldn't legally move forward on private land. The locksmith gathered his gear without touching the lock. "Not my problem," he told the security guard. "No authorization, no insurance, and now the sheriff's involved. My company won't take that risk." A car bearing HOA decals pulled up, and Denise Caldwell stepped out, clearly flustered as she surveyed the scene. The deputy approached and asked her for permits and property owner authorization. She began talking about community access rights and long-standing use, but he cut her off, polite but firm. "Ma'am, neighborhood traditions don't override property law. Private property is private, no matter what's been done in the past." He instructed her to keep all attendees on public land only. The crowd grew restless, phones in the air, voices sharp. "We drove 2 hours for this," someone snapped. The event unraveled in plain sight, coordination giving way to embarrassment. Rick filmed everything: the padlocked gate, the sign denying permission, the deputy standing watch, and the frustrated crowd. The clash between elaborate planning and a simple locked gate was almost absurd. Denise approached me directly, asking if there was any way to resolve the access issue for the sake of community goodwill. I pointed at the sign on my gate and reminded her that written approval should have been secured long before anyone planned an event around my land. The deputy finished his notes and reminded everyone the public road shoulder must remain clear for traffic. He also warned that citations could follow for unauthorized encroachments on county property. Security staff scrambled to clean up, while a few agents whispered about trying the service road. But another shut that down. Word was the utility company had locked it hours earlier. That last hope was gone. As the locksmith drove away, I caught fragments of phone calls, coordinators scrambling to find a new site. But it was too late in the day to relocate a 150-person gathering. The tight schedule, meant to keep things smooth, was now their undoing. The deputy asked me to call the non-emergency line if anyone else tried to access my land without permission. He'd stay nearby for the rest of the afternoon to keep the peace. I folded my arms and stayed quiet, letting the sound of the locksmith's truck fading down the road speak louder than anything I could say. Denise's face turned red as the reality sank in. Who would dare cut a lock now? By late afternoon, the standoff at my gate drew all parties together. The deputy stayed on scene. Denise summoned more HOA board members. Rick documented everything with the focus of a court reporter. A crowd of realtors stood on the road, faces glued to their phones, looking increasingly puzzled. One agent stormed up, waving her phone. "The app says check-in is here, but all I see are cows, not a clubhouse," she shouted, her frustration echoing over the murmurs. Others held up their own screens, broadcasting the fiasco live. Complaints spread. Why bring us here if it's wrong? The GPS dot said one thing, the reality another. Rick pulled up the county GIS maps and zoomed in for everyone to see. A red dashed line stretched from the subdivision to my gate labeled Proposed Public Access Corridor. Status, under review. Not approved. Application filed 6 months ago. At first glance, you might think it's real, Rick explained. But it's not. This is just a proposal, a draft line. Not a legal right-of-way. He tapped the legend, making the layer blink, then read aloud the fine print. Consultation pending. Subject to change. Requires owner consent and public notice before any right-of-way can exist. The pieces fell into place. Someone saw a proposed easement and assumed it was already law. They built an event on access that doesn't exist and may never exist. Ellen Carter arrived from the county office, arms full of documents. She showed the deputy that the county consent emails had been spoofed from HOA servers, not government accounts. "The headers prove it," she said firmly, holding pages up for recording phones. The crowd murmured as live-stream chats filled with mockery. HOA officials caught faking county approval. The humiliation was now global. The deputy added the evidence to his report and turned to Denise. "Care to explain these forged emails?" he asked. Denise stumbled through excuses about management company mix-ups, her voice trembling as the crowd filmed. A realtor muttered loudly, "She lied to all of us." The deputy kept writing, skepticism clear. Denise's credibility collapsed in front of rolling cameras. Utility worker Mark Bradley arrived in his truck, confirming the service road was locked to all but maintenance crews. No public access, no events, no exceptions. That shut down any hope of sneaking through the back way. The evidence piled up. Spoofed emails, fake GPS pins, an unapproved easement treated as real, and insurance that didn't cover my land. Then something surprising happened. The MLS system itself flagged the authentication failures. Phones in the crowd buzzed as check-in notifications were disabled, showing errors instead of my ranch coordinates. "Well, that's timely," Rick remarked as agents muttered about lost certification credits. Some groaned. "That means no credit." Rick leaned close and whispered, "If that's true, Denise just lost the number she needed to keep the HOA's MLS status. The humiliation wasn't just public, it was professional." Collapse, the deputy began issuing citations for encroaching on county property with cones and temporary structures. Denise accepted responsibility on behalf of the HOA. She tried one last angle, asking if any level of insurance could make me agree. I pointed again to my gate sign. "It's not about insurance, it's about permission. You planned all this without asking." The deputy finalized his report, noting the forgeries, the fake coordinates, the road violations, and the lack of owner consent. It was no misunderstanding. It was calculated. More participants arrived, only to find a locked gate, police presence, and a frustrated crowd. Rick pulled up the planning documents again, showing the deputy the proposed easement. The deputy noted the application came from the same HOA behind today's event. The timing suggested a strategy built on the assumption of approval. Ellen clarified, easement applications require review and owner input, and this one hadn't even reached public comment. "Someone jumped way ahead of the process," she said. The red line cutting to my gate told the whole story. Assumption mistaken for fact. The deputy photographed the screen, adding it to his report. The crowd began thinning, word spreading that the location was permanently closed. Coordinators made frantic calls, but moving 150 people at the last minute was impossible. As the sun set, the deputy handed me copies of the report. Every detail was documented, from spoofed emails to road violations to premature easement assumptions. "Who drew a road straight into my gate?" I wondered aloud. By evening, the last vehicles cleared out. The MLS had officially removed my gate as the check-in point and notified all participants of cancellation. Coordinates now pointed to the HOA clubhouse, where the event should have been from the start. Denise approached one last time, no longer confident, shoulders slumped, voice subdued, eyes darting at the agents still filming. "Mr. Hollis," she began, hesitating, "I owe you an apology." Her words were nearly drowned by the departing crowd's murmurs. She handed me a written statement outlining corrective steps. A public apology at the next board meeting and on their website. Acknowledgement that they had organized without permission, correction of GPS coordinates to HOA property, a year-long suspension of her event planning role, and a policy review on property boundaries. They would also pay the county fine and cover cleanup costs. The deputy nodded. "This looks comprehensive." Ellen added that the county would update its permit process to make clear the difference between proposals and approved easements. As we wrapped up, my phone chimed. A new broker had sent a proper request, proposed date, expected turnout, a sizable deposit, and insurance naming me as additionally insured, contingent on my written approval. "Now that's how you ask permission," Rick said, peering over my shoulder. The contrast with Denise's fiasco couldn't have been sharper. The deputy packed his things, handing out copies of the final report for potential civil claims. Denise and the board walked away toward their subdivision, voices low with talk of liability and property law. The official crowd dispersed, but Rick and I lingered by the gate as the sun dipped below the horizon. Cattle shifted in the fields, birds wheeled overhead, the wind whistled through the grass. A few stray cones tumbled along the shoulder, remnants of a failed takeover. The land reasserted its quiet authority. "You know," Rick said, "I've lived next door 8 years, and this is the first time anyone's tried to turn your ranch into a community center." We both laughed at the absurdity. The notion that someone could simply claim private land for a public event was almost comical. I checked my mailbox. Inside was certified mail from my insurer, updating my liability coverage with explicit language on organized events. The timing couldn't have been more fitting. Guests versus trespassers, events requiring prior notice and endorsements, everything spelled out. My protection was solid, but only when I was the one granting permission. By full dark, Rick had gone home. The road was quiet again, no confused agents scanning GPS pins. I ran my hand along the same gate that had caused so much uproar. Tomorrow it would simply be a ranch gate again, keeping my cattle in and others out. The sign was still there, plain as ever. No events without written owner permission. Sometimes the simplest words carry the greatest weight. Back inside, my coffee cup sat on the counter where I'd left it that morning when all this began as a strange email about someone reserving my ranch. It felt like a lifetime ago. I rinsed the cup, setting it for tomorrow's brew. And just like that, the closing click of the gate was more than a lock. It was the sound of this entire mess ending. Denise had once pictured rolling out a red carpet here. Instead, she left with an apology. And maybe that's the real takeaway. Private property isn't someone else's stage. Sometimes the most power,